Nearly 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, African Americans in southern states still inhabited a starkly unequal world of disenfranchisement, segregation, and various forms of oppression.
In Plessy v. Ferguson, the U.S. Supreme Court rules that segregated public facilities for whites and blacks were illegal. The ruling stood until 1954. On May 17, 1954, the United States Supreme Court handed down its ruling in the landmark case of Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. The court's unanimous decision overturned provisions of the 1896 Plessy v. Ferguson, which had allowed for separate but equal public facilities, including public schools in the United States. Declaring that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal, the Brown v. Board decision helped break the back of state-sponsored segregation and provided a spark to the American Civil Rights Movement.
Less than 10 years later, in August 1963, more than 200,000 people march on Washington, D.C. in the largest civil rights demonstration of the century, where Martin Luther King Jr. gives his famous I Have a Dream speech.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream.
The Ku Klux Klan, more commonly known as the KKK, was a white supremacy group formed in 1866. The name they coined for themselves was the Invisible Empire of the South. The KKK were most commonly known for their violent demonstrations, such as burning crosses, bombing of black churches and schools, staging rallies, and lynching. At its peak height of the KKK membership exceeded 4 million people, although the main state of operation was South Carolina. The Ku Klux Klan's acts of violence during the 1960s outraged the nation and helped win support for civil rights movement.
Malcolm X was a civil rights activist and outspoken leader of the Black Muslim faith. He challenged the mainstream civil rights movement and the nonviolent pursuit of integration championed by Martin Luther King Jr., urging his followers to defend against white aggression. Known for his famous quote, "By any means necessary," Malcolm X believed that whites and blacks cannot.
Black Muslims have sometimes, whether you have or not, and I think probably you have sometimes, it seemed to me, been preaching hate to meet hate.
I don't advocate any kind of hate.
But there's a lot of talk that sounds very much like it.
No, I think that the guilt complex of the American white man is so profound until when you begin to analyze the real condition of the black man in America, instead of the American white man eliminating the causes that create that condition, he tries to cover it up by accusing his accusers of teaching hate. But actually, they're just exposing him for being responsible for what exists.
Well, that's something of an argument, but I've heard speeches made by some of the people of your group. I think I've heard you make speeches. It seemed to me that you were advocating what I would have to describe, I think, as violence to meet the serious injuries that have been done your people, with which I totally agree.
I don't call that violence. I don't in any way encourage black people to go out and initiate acts of aggression indiscriminately against whites. But I do believe that the black man in the United States and any human being, anywhere, is well within his right to do whatever is necessary, by any means necessary, to protect his life and property.
After the assassination of Malcolm X, the Black Panther movement, known as BPP, was founded by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seals in 1966 in Oakland, California. Although BPP was around for a short period of time, it developed a reputation for militant rhetoric and clashes with the police. The group also becomes a national organization that supports food, education, and health care programs in poor African American communities.
Montgomery, Alabama, in the year 1955, Rosa Parks is arrested for refusing to give up her seat on a public bus to a white man, in turn violating the city's racial segregation laws, more commonly known as the Jim Crow Law. The results of her actions led to a 381-day boycott of city bus transportations, resulting in the eventual integration of city buses as ruled by the Supreme Court. Overall, the African American civil rights movement lasted over 151 years, beginning with the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 and still continuing today. The empowerment of African Americans began with a simple slogan, Black Power, in the late 60s, leading to the collective cultivation of racial pride and creating an advancement for African American values.